The presence of Grim Reaper is still very much alive in mystery or horror stories from Korea. The image of Grim Reaper is well established and often used in the pop cultures in the Western world too, but at least as far as I've seen, there aren't that many actual contemporary accounts of encountering them. My speculation is that the Grim Reaper in the Western culture doesn't quite fit in any of the general concept of the underworld or afterlife. There's no mention of such a being in the Bible or Christian concept, for example. While in the Korean understanding of the underworld, which is the heady mixture of images and concepts from Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and shamanism, Grim Reaper still takes quite a natural place as the officer of the underworld who is in charge of collecting and bringing the souls of the dead to the underworld. I've already explained a bit more in detail about the concept of Korean Grim Reaper and the underworld in the previous episodes. If you missed, I recommend you to check them out first to better enjoy today's episode. Links in the description and at the corner of the screen. So, we are taking a look at 4 more allegedly true stories from Korea about the encounter with Grim Reapers. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by your host, Anthony. It happened when I was a freshman at college. That day I felt a bit tired and caught a quick nap on the desk before the lecture started. When I woke up, my body seemed shocked. He told me to look on the mirror that I looked like death. All the other mates agreed. I wasn't feeling anyway ill, so I thought they were pulling my legs. But when I saw myself in the mirror, I was pale as a sheet of paper. Lips had gone blue too. I looked like I was wearing the ghost makeup from a TV show. I still felt fine, but my own face gave me chills. I skipped the lecture and headed back home. Once back home and after a shower, I really started feeling drained. It wasn't like feeling exhausted, but more like the core of me had been disappeared, and what was left were just a shell of the person. I was about to fall on my bed, but something in me was rejecting that familiar place. I tend to trust my own sixth sense, as I had experienced it saving my life on some occasions. So I went over to my brother's room and fell on his bed. Even in sleep, I could feel my energy keep draining out. I heard my parents coming back home and my brother protesting me taking over his room, but I could not get up at all. Then, in the middle of the night, and the house fell into silence after all went to bed, the noise of the house door opening woke me up. It was past 4 a.m. and all the family member was already home. That meant it should be an intruder, a robber. I quickly grabbed the wooden sword my brother practices kendo and sneaked back into bed. I expected either mom or brother coming out to check what the noise was, and then I'd run out to attack the intruder from behind. But nobody seemed to reacting despite the large noise the intruder made. My thoughts were all over the place. Should I go out and attack the intruder first? But I was still feeling hollow. Would I actually be strong enough to make the move? Or would it simply make the situation worse? Should I stay put or make the first move? In the end, I decided to take the action, but all my senses were telling me not to, just like the earlier when I was about to lie down in my own bed. I just grabbed the sword harder and waited. From that moment, I could hear somebody talking to himself and though it was impossible to see the hall and the living room from my brother's room behind the closed door, but somehow I could see what was going on. A man in black suit, black fedora hat, and black shoes was standing in front of my room where my brother should be sleeping in. He mumbled to himself,
"I know it's not you on the list, but I still need somebody to take. Excuse me."
Then he cracked open the door and peeped inside.
"Oh, that's not him. Why is he sleeping here?"
He then turned around and started to approach my brother's room where I was in. Suddenly our pet dog, a little Yorkie, came up and started barking ferociously. The little dog was usually very fearful and would hide away even from a sight of a kitten, but now he was vicious as about to kill the man. He could not move forward because of the dog.
"Dear, dear, are you aware that it isn't actually your master's turn? Aren't you one ferocious beast? I can't delay any more."
He seemed increasingly unsure and nervous in front of my dog that wouldn't stop barking and growling. In the end he gave up, saying,
"Okay, I'm going. It's one lucky day for him."
All the while, watching what was unfolding, I could just keep holding onto the wooden sword and sweat all over. But as soon as the man in black got out of the house, I felt energy flowing back in my body. I checked the clock. It just passed 6 in the morning. Not long after, my mom got up and came out to the kitchen. I also got out and asked her if she hadn't heard any noise during the night. She said, "No." I grew unsure about myself. After all, that I had seen what had happened through the closed door would have been impossible. Must have been just a nightmare, right? Then our Yorkie dog came up to me. I held him up to give a kiss and noticed his voice had gone terribly hoarse. I froze on the spot. It wasn't just a dream, then? A friend of mine suffers hemophilia. We've been friends from childhood, and over the years I've seen his life evolving never very far from various visits to hospitals. One day he came back from a dental treatment. He struggled with throbbing pain as the anesthesia started wearing out before he could finally manage to fall asleep. In his dream, he found himself walking along a river. The river ran through a strange barren land with not a single tree or plants. Even the river bank he was walking on was made with plain sands, with no rocks or large pebbles that would have made any recognizable feature. He looked around, not sure of what to do, and saw something approaching from afar. They were 2 people. One man in black was tall, and the other one was skinny and weak and was looking down the ground. As they came closer, my friend could make out more of the features. The weak one seemed about 60, and his eyes were blank like an empty shell of a person. And the man in black looked a typical Grim Reaper, with a very pale complexion, with slitty eyes. One thing stood out was his extremely bad skin, so dry that it seemed almost cracking and crumbling away. The man in black glared at my friend as he passed by, but being naturally fearless, he just looked back at him, thinking, "Put some cream on that face." And the man in black turned around and said to my friend,
"Spit it out now, or else you'll have to join me."
"What?" Then he woke up. He felt so dizzy and breathless that he coughed loudly a few times. What came out of his throat was a big lump of gall. The dental treatment earlier left his tooth keep bleeding, and while he slept it pulled in his throat and turned into a lump, which could have choked him to death. I sometimes get panic attacks when under a severe stress. Hyperventilation and tingling sensation at the nerve endings all over the body are two of typical symptoms. When that happens, I could just drop down and wait till it passes. Probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I and my girlfriend had a few days of a holiday at the seaside. Back home, I already missed her, so called her to dine out that very evening. Everything was super until we started arguing over the matter that I don't even remember. It got totally out of hand, and in the end, I was struck by a panic attack as I described earlier. It was the first time for my girlfriend to see me in that state, and she, totally frightened herself, ran away to get some water for me. The street we were on was in an industrial area with rows of small factories, so by the dusk as it was eerily empty. I was sitting against a wall, struggling to take deep breath, with my head stuck between my knees, when somebody whispered in my ears,
"Gosh, not dead yet?"
I was startled and looked up. Street was empty, apart from my girlfriend running from afar with a bottle of water in her hand. After I managed to calm down, I asked her, "Did you see anybody around me earlier?" "No, you were all alone, shivering all over like a puppy," she said. That much should have been just an odd instant. But when I came back home, Mom told me, "I think I should let you know after all. You see, your sister had the same dream for 3 nights while you were on holiday. It made her so nervous." In the dream, my sister and I were walking along a path through a forest. Then from afar, a man in black with all the usual attire of a Grim Reaper glided through from the other side of the path. Only she saw it, and she dragged me behind a large tree to hide. She peeped to see the Reaper coming closer and closer. And when he got right up to the tree, she just shut her eyes from fear. When she opened the eyes again, the Reaper had grabbed me from behind already and was dragging me away with a creepy grin on his face. Usually I would have just brushed it as nothing more than a dream, but on the top of what had just happened to me earlier, I cannot but think a Grim Reaper might have been around me, waiting for his chance. My great-grandmother passed away at 100, sadly before I was born, but my parents lived with her till her passing, and I could hear lots of amusing stories about her. She was fearless and never lost her energy. She worked in the field till the day she died, and nothing could faze her under the sky. When she came across a snake on the farming field, for example, she simply snatched it up by the tail and threw it back towards the mountain. Then one morning, Great-Grandma seemed outraged, bellowing swears. "What kind of delinquents play trick on me, huh? I'll find out whose work this is and beat him down flat." My parents were surprised to see her in this state and asked what was eating her. Apparently the night before, she was woken up by somebody calling, "Ma'am, ma'am, it's time now. Get up." She found a guy clad in a black cloak. Great-Grandma just looked at him thinking, what is this crazy man on about? And he repeated, "It's time to go, ma'am. We have a long way to go." "Go? Where to? This is my home and I live here. Where should I go?" Grandma shot back. "Yama, the king of the Underworld, is waiting for you. Please get up now." Before the guy could finish the sentence, Great-Grandma jumped up and slapped across his face. "Yes, I'm the oldest in the village, but I don't take such a prank. Yama's waiting. Are you kidding me? Get lost, you prig, before I cut your balls off and throw them to my dog." She bellowed at him and kept beating him with her back scratcher. The guy was totally unprepared for the attack and could only utter broken words in between screams. "No, ma'am, I'm not a human, but a reaper." Mentioning reaper only made Grandma madder and kept beating until the back scratcher broke into pieces. The guy grabbed the moment of ceasefire and picked up his crushed hat and ran away. My parents couldn't believe what Grandma had to say, but upon checking her room, indeed, the wooden back scratcher was strewn in pieces. Great-Grandmother was still mad and went around the village to investigate herself who the delinquent was. Only then she came back home and said, "So, it really was a reaper. I don't care. I wouldn't move an inch until Yama himself come to take me." She emptied 2 bottles of rice wine and went to bed as usual. A few months passed, and the reaper visited again. "Ma'am, now that you know I'm indeed a reaper, shall we go now?" he said, visibly on guard. Grandma picked up a fireplace poker and roared, "You are out of your mind to come back to me. Do you want to get bitten till the iron poker breaks?" The reaper jumped back out of the room, but insisted, "Ma'am, who wants to die? But it's the natural course that all life must die. Don't be so unreasonable. Come along with me. What kind of person beats a Grim Reaper so?" You want to lure me out by triggering my temper, eh? Having lived almost a century, I've seen it all. If you dare, come in here and fetch me," Grandma said. And that way they argued back and forth until a rooster crowed. The reaper told her, "Next time, I will certainly take you with me. Prepare yourself for that," and disappeared. Other family members didn't really believe her bragging about suing away Grim Reaper twice. They all just thought she was hallucinating due to her age. But one morning, it was a big holiday, and members of the extended family were gathered together to pay greetings to great-grandma. And they were shocked to find the room looking like a battle had taken place. But Grandma simply said, "No matter," and threw what she was holding in her hand. "None of you believed me, so I snatched up the lacing closer of the Reaper's clock," she said. And indeed, it was a piece of black fabric. Looking at the surprised faces of the family, she carried on explaining what had happened. Previous night, she woke up from hearing some low voice calling her. She didn't even flinch, just grabbed the poker and opened the room door. Outside were clouds of rainbow colors, and a litter decorated with flowers was waiting. The same Reaper stood out and said,
"Ma'am, this time really is the day. I even brought this litter specially for you. It will be a comfortable journey."
The litter was indeed so beautiful that Grandma momentarily thought to herself that she might jump on. But if she was that weak, it wasn't my great-grandma. "I've already told you twice that I can't go yet. There are still lots for me to do here. Go away," she said and turned around. The Reaper rushed over and held her hand.
"I can't let you slip this time. I'll take you by force if I must," he said,
only to get beaten mercilessly from her poker with a barrage of swears. But the Reaper, for once, fought back, and the two had a proper tussle. But in the end, the Reaper was kicked out of the room while Grandma ripping the lace off his clock. "Don't you even dream of coming back unless Yama himself comes to visit me. I have lots to do. I have to fertilize the field and harvest grass to feed my cow. Now piss off," she said, and locked her door up. No family member could dispute her story anymore, looking at the torn-off black fabric in front of them. Great-grandma lived a few years more. Then one day, she told her family to prepare for her funeral, and a few days later passed away peacefully in her sleep. Probably this time, Yama might have come himself after all. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for your listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. My cultural understanding is somewhat limited to Far East Asian and the Western Christian world, so usually end up comparing the two. If you're coming from or have knowledge of cultures from different parts of the world, please feel free to enlighten me. What are the Grim Reaper figures in other cultures? A worldwide comparison of Grim Reaper alone would make an interesting study to understand different cultures and psyches. Or so I think. Anyway, if you haven't yet, please give my video a thumbs up, leave comments, share it with others, and subscribe to my channel. A new episode comes up every Sunday with fresh stories from Korean internet communities. Until the next, stay safe and take care.